Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode. I just got done with our discussion with John Wood, and I got to say, there was so much impact in this discussion. We talked about so many different things, from getting clear on who you are and what your identity is. John has 4 questions that you should always be asking yourself when you're thinking about that. And they're really, really impactful questions and really simple questions that you should be thinking about. We talked about fear and the fear of failure, but also the fear of something else. And it might be surprising to you. We all have it, but it's really, really important to understand it. So check out that. We talked about freedom and what true freedom is and how John defines true freedom, which I thought was really insightful. And then we talked about, the importance of mission and purpose, his book, but also the importance of how to be accountable to that and why we need a constant reminder and why we need that mission to be a constant reminder. We talked about societal expectations and how to use that and how to leverage that, but also how to filter that. And then, we had a really interesting discussion about how taking the exact same action can be on purpose, in alignment with your purpose, or an obstacle to your purpose, but the exact same action. So really insightful information there. And finally, not only did he have a phenomenal book, but his book series, 7 Deadly Dragons, that he issued, and the relevance of that in our business world and in our families and for our kids too. So a lot of great discussion, a lot of great information from John that I think can be really impactful. I'm excited for you to check out the show. Thank you. Hello and welcome to the Purpose Matrix. I am very excited for this week's guest, Mr. John Wood. John, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Phil. Great to be here with you.
Well, great to have you. And thanks so much for taking the time. You're coming off a busy travel schedule, but you still have a lot going on. We were talking about it a little bit on the pre-show, but for our listeners, so Dr. John Wood, an eye doctor, we're going to talk about that, by the way, and kind of how you've transitioned into what you're doing now and how you balance all that. But author of 10 books, including a series that came out recently with 7 books in it, the 7 Deadly Dragons book series for kids. Also released a book over a decade ago, Ordinary Lives, Extraordinary Missions, that I was just going through my notes again. I'd read it a couple of years ago and just really enjoyed going back through it. And we're going to talk about a lot of those things today and how we can apply a lot of these principles to our lives. So very exciting stuff. And then a speaker. So first of all, that book has sold over 250,000 copies, and then speaks throughout the country to schools and churches on really the contents of his book and really just having a great impact. So John, thanks so much for coming on. And I want to start with your story and really how you got to where you are, who you became, who you are, and, leaving a very, I'll say, attractive, prosperous, financially prosperous career, or partially leaving it, if you will. I kind of want to get into that because that took some courageousness to make the moves that you have made. So tell us more about it.
Yeah, so I'm originally from a pretty small town in near your area, so kind of came from the same stomping grounds, and went off to college and then went to optometry school at Ohio State, became an eye doctor. So that was kind of the launch of my career. I've just as a background, a very shy, introverted kid. I always tease, I think my high school class voted me most likely to become a mime because I never talked. And God has a sense of humor. So eventually, I graduated as an eye doctor, moved to a small farming town in Northwest Ohio. And my wife and I just kind of started getting invitations in our community and around our church to do some ministries, activities, and do things for families. And I started a ministry called Fun, Faith, and Family, or she did. It's one of those voluntold things. And I basically was in charge of doing a talk once a month to, I'd speak to maybe 10 to 12 people, 10, 15 people most. And I did this for several years. And every year I said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. But basically what I would do is just a lot of what you do, I read books, I listened to audio tapes when I drove in the car, and I just tried to share a lot of that, my Catholic faith, mostly just the principles of life and virtue. And Matthew Kelly, I know you've mentioned him on the show before, had a big impact on me of becoming the best version of yourself. And it was resonating with that small crowd. And then in 2012, I reached out to Dynamic Catholic, or what was beginning to be Dynamic Catholic, in my parish, trying to get Matthew Kelly to come to our area to do this big event. And I was the event coordinator. And, I'd been doing these talks for years and started that year to kind of be taking my own notes and develop this 5 steps. I'm like you. I like acronyms. I like steps, and I came up with these 5 steps to winning the war within. I was a runner in high school. I played a lot of sports, but I was really good at running. And I figured, the race is kind of like a war within. And that's where a lot of my stuff came from my books, that we have this battle to win inside. And And so I kind of turned that into a manuscript, and I was hosting this huge event with Matthew Kelly. I gave him the manuscript, and he's a New York Times best-selling author. He's published, sold millions of books. He took the manuscript, he read it, he said he would publish it through their book program. And the way their book program works is they give out mass quantities. So it's high quantity, low cost, $2, $3 a copy, which was great for me. It just basically spread the message all over the country. Yep. As you mentioned, 250,000 copies of the book. That's how you sell a lot. You just give them away. so
you can hear the humility already.
Yeah. I know of at least 3 people that have read it. So you're the 4th. So that's great.
Yeah. My wife read it too. So there's 4 now.
Okay. But that opened up all kind of doors for me that I never imagined opening. I started to get invitations all over the country to do conferences and men's conferences and parish missions and school talks. And for about 7 or 8 years before COVID, I really just traveled the country. It was tough on my family. I had 3 or 4 small kids at the time, tough on my wife. And my target audience has always been younger parents. I want to help parents teach virtue to kids. And so I kind of refocused right around COVID when everything stopped and shut down. And I worked on these retreats, these Sacramento retreats, which you've been to 1 or 2, I think. And
one, yeah, and then I'm sure next year another, and then 3 years from now another, hopefully. So
I punish these parents because as they have more kids, they keep going through the retreat. They're kind of required, and that was the thing. The parents are required to be at these Sacramento prep retreats, and I had my target audience was there each year. Where I could give that message and inspire them, reawaken them, give them purpose, mission in their life, and then hopefully they can pass that on to their kids. And from there, it's just been a humbling journey that I could write these books, I can share this message, and through all of that, I kind of slowly went back and I work in nursing homes as an eye doctor, so I travel a lot there, and I was working 4 or 5 days a week, and then I cut it to 3, and then a few years ago I took the leap of faith and I cut it to 2. And really that was just about reorienting my schedule. I don't see less patients. I just see more in a day, and I make it more efficient. And I just work harder those 2 days so I can basically run the ministry. And I still just live off of being an eye doctor. My nonprofit organization, so far I've been blessed. I can keep growing it and hire the people I need to hire to do the things that I'm not good at, and learning how to build a team and find the right people. And so I'm just blessed that I can live as being an eye doctor and then run that ministry mission nonprofit on the side. So that's kind of where I'm at now. And, launched these 7 books last year for kids, and that's really taken off and given us more windows of opportunity to share the message of virtue and purpose and meaning in people's lives.
Yeah, I love it. And I don't want to overlook, and then I want to get into the books, but the move to 2 days a week from it could be 5. You could make 2.5 times more than what you're making, but not only did you cut it down, and you're really donating a ton of your very high dollar, high value time. So thank you for doing that. But also you had to figure out from a business perspective how to set that up, how to structure it. And I know we've even talked in the past then, with what you're doing in your nonprofit, there's all kinds of leadership and employee engagement and marketing strategies and all kinds of things there too. So this is not we're not just talking to a speaker here. You've built 2 different businesses that are self-sustaining and running and really having a great impact in many different ways. So well done. I want to talk about something you kind of mentioned, but you said you're a very shy, introverted, and then God has a sense of humor, and now you're on stages all over the place. But I want to talk about, there's elements of identity within that, and what your identity is, or what it was as a kid, what it is now. And I just want to talk about the topic of identity a little bit because we've talked about it. So tell me about maybe how you see yourself, and how should we see ourselves? Because you talk about it in the book as well.
Yeah, I think identity is important. In a lot of my talks, I talk about the 4 most important questions that everybody has to answer in life of, who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? And how will I get there? And I love your podcast. I listen to a lot of the episodes, and you talk about that having that mission, having that purpose. And I think that starts with our identity. And I've always told people we can't really, answer the question, who am I, until we answer the question, who is God? Who is that creator? Where did we come from? And so that's kind of always been the foundation of my identity. I I try not to identify myself by my success or my failure, what I've accomplished and my achievements, where I've messed up or where I've failed. But I define myself really by my baptism and my faith that I am a son of the Father. Losing my dad was a big part of my journey. And when I lost my dad back in 2008, he was a huge influence in my life. That guy that I always looked to, I asked, and when he was gone, I felt like, a little bit lost in that sense. And I think it took losing my father on earth before I realized I had a father in heaven. And I kind of, really understood that a little bit more and grasped that as my identity instead of worrying about how successful I am or what other people think or what my business analytics are or any of that kind of stuff. But if I can root myself as a son of the Father, and then I'm created for a purpose and for a mission, and then I can seek that great mission that, kind of Matthew Kelly set me on that journey. He calls it becoming the best version of yourself. I've called it becoming a saint, making the journey of life, that return to the Father, that our goal, that my mission has always been heaven. I want to go there. I want to become, the best version of myself, as he would say. And that is rooted around my identity as a son of the Father. And I think that's important with all the aspects of my jobs and my ministries and everything that I do.
Yeah. And what I think is important is a lot of times we can identify with different roles in our life or different areas of life. Like, so I'm a parent, or I'm a spouse, or I am a leader at a company, or I own a company, or I'm a real estate investor. And you can be those things, but and you correct me here, but if you're ultimately those things, those are things that can be stripped away from you completely. Whereas I think the important question is like, what is your ultimate identity? Like, who are you at your deepest core? And I think for that not to be stripped away, the only thing that can be is a person of faith. For us, it's Christian, Catholic, but I think it has to be like, I think we have to know who we are. And I think maybe the point is it's dangerous to identify ourselves too strongly with something that can be taken away from us, because that's when we run into identity crisis or other things. And it sounds like you kind of had that a little bit at your younger age, look, so if that's happening, okay, why is this happening? And go back to your 4 questions. Who is God? And think through those things and just do a lot of, introspective work and dig deeper and find out why, and really dig into who you are, because that can guide then, if you start there, I think that can guide your, sub identities or other identities. Like, okay, what kind of parent are you going to be? Things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I say. It's not like a class in school or one subject of many. I tell people all the time, when I'm doing, Catholic ministry or I'm doing, retreats, that, if you want your child to be a great athlete, great, teach them the faith, teach them virtue. You want them to have successful businesses, great, teach them that faith, teach them that virtue. If you want them to have successful relationships and marriages, when we identify with that ultimate goal, that ultimate purpose, then all these other little things we do in life do have purpose. They do have meaning. That I'm an eye doctor because it's helping me become a saint. It's helping me become the best version of myself. I'm a father because it's helping me become the best version of myself, to become the saint I was created to be. So my sports make a lot of sense, and my sports were a big part of my life. They taught me all these virtues, but those things were in a purpose of not becoming a champion in the sense of that's the ultimate goal, or the winning a trophy, but to finish with nothing left to give. Same thing with business, same thing with family. And everything makes sense if that ultimate purpose revolves around that identity of a son of the Father, that I'm here to make a journey to become a saint, that I'm going to heaven, and that my faith can help me get there and accomplish that mission. That's just helped me in every aspect of my life. So it doesn't take away anything from that. And you talk about that faith, family, finances, all of that stuff. It all fits together when you can have that solid foundation of what your purpose and mission is.
And I think when you get clear on that, I love that you just said nothing left. And I loved your analogy in the book where you talk about like a race. So I ran so John has run, I think, several full marathons. I've run one half marathon. But when I ran it, I didn't know what pace I wanted to do. And someone's like, come out hard and fast, because you just don't want to leave anything on the table. And my time was much better than I thought it would be. And right now I'm like, I think I could maybe do a little bit better. Dang it. Son of a gun. Yeah. I got to work on this. I think I can do a little bit more. But your point is, we don't want to do that at the end of our lives. We don't want to say, I think I could have done more. So tell me more about that. And I don't want to leave anything on the table. And then I want to tie that to, you talk a lot about fears and really a different way of thinking about fear. What we think fears our real fears are versus what they really are. So kind of tie those together, leaving nothing on the table in fear.
Yeah. And I think, again, racing was a great analogy for me. And there is a lot of fear there. If I, and I ran the race the same way every time. It's not the smartest way to run the race, by the way. I would start, straight out to the front. I just always bolt to the front, just my personality. But there's a fear there. Like if I work really hard now, it's going to hurt too much, or I'm going to fail, or I'm going to fall behind, or whatever. And sometimes there is a balance there. Obviously you need to have a balance, and you need to have, that pace of life, and we don't want to burn out or anything like that. But we also don't want to have the fear of failure that's going to hold you back. We don't have the fear of what might happen or whatever. If we go all in and we try our very best, I always say that phrase, try your best and trust in God's grace to do the rest. That the goal of running the race is not to beat everyone else. It's not to finish first. It's to finish with nothing left to give. And the same is true about life. That we can go through life and not use the gifts and talents that we were given. We can go through life and have a lot of regrets because I'll do that later, I'll do that tomorrow, or I'm not good enough, or what if I fail, or what if people say this? So many times our fear of failure, our fear of the unknown gets in the way of us striving for great things, or dreaming big, or setting big goals. And if I set a big goal and I don't make it there, but I tried my very best, that's success for me. I gave my very best. But there's no easy way out of the race. I always remembered that if I give in to my body's demands to slow down and avoid the pain, then later on I was going to regret it. And I'm going to be in that mind. I'm like, I could have done better if I would have just pushed through that, so You're going to face the pain either way. But that pain of regret, I feel like, hurts worse than the pain of going all in and giving that best effort. That's always going to, you're always going to be happier in the long run if you go all in.
Well, so first, I love that. And I fear regret, not failure. Like, I love that. Like, so we think about that and like what will happen. And again, the pain of regret is worse. But you also talk about, we have a fear of success. And because what if we are successful? And what if, like for you, so 250,000, like you got to be on your A game now. I mean, yes, you've been successful with this book. You've written another book series. You're being successful. So like, you can't just stop. You're being held accountable from your past successes in a way. And look, admittedly, I for sure think about, well, if we do this, wow, I'm going to have to work more or do more, right? So tell me more about just the fear of success and how that holds us back.
Yeah, I mean, the better you do, the more you have to do it. I mean, back to the running case in point, I didn't like to run, but the better I got at it and the more I become a state champion, then I'm obviously going to be expected. And I always talked about that analogy of my dad holding the stopwatch. The stopwatch holds me accountable. My dad was kind of my hero, and he was at all those races and he's timing it, and that stopwatch doesn't lie. So he knows what I've done in the past. And when you set the bar high, to make it even higher, that's hard, to try to improve. Every tenth of a second mattered to me when I was running a race, and so I think sometimes, if we do become more successful, people expect more, and we like to make excuses. We like to say, well, I'm not good enough. And if I succeed, I can't make that excuse anymore. If I accomplish a great thing, then people are going to expect more out of me and more out of me. And again, it's not about what other people expect, or again, you going back to your goal and your purpose and your mission. I just want to finish with nothing left to give. And there's something more inside of me. And it took coaches, and it took teammates, and it took people pushing me harder than I ever thought I could possibly go myself. And not being afraid of, it doesn't matter, what the outcome is. It matters the effort you gave and how much you go all in. And so again, it's the same fear, really, success and failure. We're afraid of consequences. We're afraid of what might happen next. We're afraid of the unknown, and the unknown if we're successful, or the unknown if we fail. I think that they're both the same type of fear. It's just the fear of not wanting to give our best and wanting to live life with excuses and say, this is just who I am and I can't get any better, or anything like that. So I think that we have to push through both of those types of fear.
So, and one thing you said just is that I think if we are successful, and we might fear that, but it's going to take more of us could be more of our time, but it could be more leadership skill. It could be more faith. It could be a lot more, could be a lot of different things. And the key is, if you bring it back to Matthew Kelly, it is going to make us become a better version of ourselves if we're successful in something. And, and maybe I'll even say, because I want to talk about societal things right now, I want to shift to that, but success in society leads to the desire maybe, or just more success, but more responsibility. Like, with success becomes responsibility. But we also have to try to separate those things from success, like societal success too. So I want to talk about society, and maybe even a step back. Like, you talk in your book, and like, to me, if we just step back, like way back, think about everything we do in a day. How much different is it than 100 years ago? Yet we are fully expected to do all of those things. Or how much different is it than how people lived 500 years ago? Yet this is today's society, so it's expected. Like, if you put society in the context of time, then if we go back 2,000 years, right? Like, how do you think of, or how should we think about societal expectations?
Yeah, I think that again, that's where the fear comes. Is sometimes what will people think? And again, I think it's an unfounded fear, whether you lived in the 1700s or 1800s or you live in the 2000s. When you're successful, you're gonna win. What do they say? False friends, and you're gonna see who your enemies are. You're gonna have people coming after you. You're gonna have, you're gonna be at that top of the podium. People are gonna want to knock you down. Again, you're gonna always have critics. Matthew Kelly talks about critics a lot, and sometimes we're afraid of our critics. And I can be successful, or I can do a great retreat, or I can do a great event, and I survey all the people at those events, anonymous surveys, and I can read through them, and 99% of them are like, "This is great, this is wonderful, this is awesome." There's always one, there's always two that just rip into you. They just say, "This is terrible, this is awful, or it was a waste of my time." And what do you go to bed thinking about? You go to bed thinking about the critic. The critic always takes up all of our time. And that's where I think you have to go back to your identity. The question you started with is like, who am I? I'm a son of the Father. And my goal is simply to try my best and trust in God's grace to do the rest. And at the end of the day, if I gave my best effort, we just have to keep that focus on our mission of being the best person we can be, and keep the priorities in order that you talk about. Right. Am I meeting my faith goals? Am I meeting my family goals, and making sure I'm the best father I can be? And
so you have a 5-step process that combines really knowledge and action. And you talk about that in your book. And then I also want to talk about the newer book series too here in a minute. But you talk about, so first, like, your 5 steps: know you're in a war, know who your enemy is, free yourself, have a shield, have a sword. So those are your 5 steps you talk about in the book. And I don't want you to give away too much, because order the book, get the book, and I'll ask you at the end kind of how they can do that. But tell us more about that process, how it's iterative, and like the really important elements of that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my analogies, again, are sports-based, battle-based. The winning the war within, the subtitle that we are in a war, like in a sense of not, physicality, but like an internal battle that not everything you desire is good for you. And we should probably learn this from a very early age that, just because you desire to eat chocolate for breakfast, lunch, and dinner does not mean that's healthy for you or good for you. And so, again, we're fallen human beings. We struggle with disordered desires. And so having the goal and the mission helps me make good choices. So step 1 is to know that I'm in a war, and that each day I'm going to have to make decisions. And some of those decisions are going to give me a better consequence than others. And I always say, make your decisions based on how you're going to feel when you're done, not when you start. I might start off feeling like eating the 5 Twinkies, but I know I'm going to feel horrible after I do. And I hardly ever feel like going out for a run, but I always feel better when I do, when I exercise, when I make that commitment and make that discipline. So that's the battle. Just making great decisions. Decision making is huge. And then knowing that we have obstacles. The Catholic Church calls them the world, the devil, the flesh, that there's a lot of temptations in the world. You know that. I mean, everybody knows that. You go out on Friday and Saturday night, you're going to have temptations to go away from things that are going to keep you from accomplishing your goal, and you're getting bad habits. You got so many temptations out there, especially in the country we live in, that we got to know those obstacles and know who we're up against, know what to avoid if we need to avoid it, and just understand understand that there are obstacles out there, and you got to identify I always say, we'll talk about the dragons in a minute, but if you can identify your dragon, you can slay the dragon. That's step 2. You got to know, watch the game film of the enemy. And then step 3.
Real quick,
real quick,
because you just triggered something that I didn't think about, but know your enemy. Okay. Like at a higher level in the Catholic Church, you talked about the devil, but if we bring it down to an individual, and like, this is how this presents itself is different for anyone. So this could be, I go home and I watch TV for 4 hours a night and I'm just loading my brain with garbage, or I'm drinking every single night, or I'm binging on the weekends, or there's all this can present itself in many different ways. So is this about knowing there's a bigger enemy, or just knowing what your enemies are, like what you struggle with?
Exactly. Yeah. And that kind of encompasses the world, the flesh, especially, is that battle inside that I desire things. And so, Alcoholics Anonymous, 12-step program, extremely successful. Step number 1 is you have to admit, I have a problem and I'm powerless to overcome this by myself. I need help. And you're going to seek that step to become, and we'll talk about step 3. That kind of leads into step 3. If you can name your enemies, you can name those vices that are keeping you from accomplishing your mission, which I said, my mission, becoming the best version of myself, becoming the saint I was created to be. I know if I drink too much, that's going to prevent me, or if I get too lazy, or if, whatever your struggles are. And we all have those different obstacles, but you have to name them. You have to write them down. I always say there's genius in Catholicism. When the sacrament of reconciliation, the church says you got to examine your conscience. So you sit down and you think about what you did wrong. In the real world, think about sports. You watch the game film and it's painful to watch, but you see your mistakes, because your mistakes and your weaknesses are your key to a bigger and brighter future. If you can name them, you can identify them, and then you can come up with a battle strategy to overcome them. And that's step 3. You free yourself. You figure out, what is it going to take for me to get over this bad habit that's holding me back from accomplishing my mission. And then step 4 is the shield. I call that, whether that's your faith circle or your family, your allies, those people that are going to help you, protect you, hold you accountable, give you the grace, the support, the prayers, whatever you need to support you in that mission. And then step 5 is to have the sword, and that's fighting back. That's being proactive. That's spreading the message like you're doing. You're teaching other people to have that purpose and mission. You're teaching other people the lessons that you've learned in life, the lessons you've been given from other people, and trying to share that and make the world a better place. Because when you become a better person, I become a better person, that we're in this together, that we're part of a huge team, a huge family, and that we don't just do this for ourselves. We do this to share with others. And that's really what step 5 is about, is going out there and changing the world.
And so step 3, so free yourself. And I think, there's a lot of discussions about freedom, and I've thought about a lot about this word, like what it means. And I even asked a question to a buddy of mine, like what are the types of freedom? But I don't think there are like just 3 or 4 types of freedom. Like, so in a business or real estate world, like a lot of people talk about financial freedom, which that can be a real thing. That's not ultimate freedom, but that's financial freedom, right? Or is there like time freedom, or what does that even mean? But, and I think about it, I guess, freedom of purpose is the ultimate freedom that we're pursuing. And if that is a purpose for God, that's of course the ultimate. And that's what I want to do. But talk about, I guess, how you define freedom, like when you said free yourself, because I think there's the micro of this, which is identifying an individual issue or challenge you have, and the macro of this as well.
Yeah, freedom is basically the ability to choose to do what is right, not the ability to choose to do whatever I feel like doing or whatever I want to do. And in fact, in my book, I'm talking about making those good choices when you kind of come off of step 1 and 2 of, knowing that you're in a battle, knowing your obstacles. And then the freedom is choosing to do what is right. In a sense, think about America and the addictions. I'm a doctor. I'm in the medical field. And we look at all these statistics, that teenagers spend like 7-8 hours a day looking at a screen. I mean, that's not freedom. That might be doing what you feel like doing and scrolling and looking at a screen. But if we can't put it down, we can't say no, we're no longer free. That thing is controlling our actions. And Same thing, 70% of Americans are obese or overweight. That's not freedom. That might be eating whatever you want, but you're not free in that sense. You're becoming a prisoner. So the type of freedom I'm talking about is the ability to choose to do what is right. You might have $1 million because you're really good at gambling, but you can't stop. That's not freedom.
Right.
Freedom is I can take care of myself, and I'm not going to worship this. I'm not going to put all my hopes and dreams in this. I'm confident about who I am, and no matter what happens, that's freedom to me. Is to be able to choose what's right, even when it's hard, even in a difficult situation. That I don't want to be a slave to anything, and we all have our struggles with that, whether it's phone or food or anything else that can
all kinds of
make us prisoners.
Yeah, and the other thing you talked about there too is like the way that these different. So you talk about spiritual, physical, mental, emotional. I forget the order you talk about it, but the importance of understanding, like you talk about health a lot in the book, and just the real understanding of it. Because say, well, you said in the book, if I drink more or like eating, that's like a social thing. So I'm better, like I'm having more fun, like that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But that's when, if we have clarity of purpose in what we're really pursuing, then, well, how is, like, are we free? Like, are we physically free, or are we helping our purpose, or are we hurting our purpose by doing those things? So the connection, tell me about the connection of these different areas of life you have.
Yeah. It's again, back to the same thing. Is this helping me accomplish my mission, in the sense of, it's not a list of, here's the things that are going to make you a slave, and here's things that are good for you. It's not about what you're doing. It's about, is that helping you accomplish my mission? So the example you just did, maybe I need to spend more social time with my friends, and I go out, have a drink with my friends. That's a good thing. That's helping me accomplish my mission. That's helping be a good friend and another person. But if I'm in my own room and I can't stop, and I have to have a drink every single night, now I'm a slave. So the one specific action could be helping you in one circumstance, or it could be really hurting you in another circumstance. So defining your mission, again, is key to helping you understand, is this a good decision, or is this not a good decision? Is this enslaving me, or is this helping me become free? Because, maybe it's challenging for me to put my work down. That work might be a really good thing, but maybe it's just challenging me for me to stop working, and I need to stop working, right, so that I can spend quality time with my family and my wife and my kids, because that's the decision that's going to help me in this situation accomplish my mission of becoming, the best version of myself. And so, that's how we make decisions, really, is what we're talking about, how we can choose to do what is right.
And I like that, because a seemingly very similar decision is either in alignment with your purpose or not in alignment with it, depending on the circumstances of it. So it's really it's a very personalized thing that you need to be thinking about yourselves and understanding, like, what is this? But don't take I would say, don't, like, this is hard stuff. So don't just take the easy route here either. Like, really do some introspective work to say, okay, is this really in alignment with what I'm trying to do here? So I want to talk a little bit about the book series, and tell me about the book series a little bit more that just came out, the target audience. And even I wouldn't mind hearing, how this stuff applies to, like, business leaders, professionals, as well as then why they should get this for their kids too.
Yeah. So the new book series is titled The 7 Deadly Dragons. So we do, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of sacramental prep retreats for kids going through First Communion, First Reconciliation in the Catholic Church. And we came up with this analogy of dragons as sins and temptations and obstacles to our mission, which is becoming a saint. And so, in the Catholic Church, we have the sacrament of reconciliation, where we examine our conscience. And I talked about before, you name your sins, you name your dragons. And so giving it a visual, giving it an image of a dragon. And in the Catholic Church, we have the theological, the 7 deadly sins. And so we use that concept of pride, envy, sloth, greed, wrath, gluttony, and lust. And again, these things aren't arbitrary rules to follow. These are things that can hinder us in every aspect of our life. If I'm slothful, in a sense, I'm not seeking what is the mission and purpose of my life. I might work really hard, but I might be working really hard at the wrong things. If I'm greedy, then my whole goal and mission is, how much money can I make? And that's going to hinder your business. You become a greedy person. Yeah, you might become very wealthy, but you might do it in an immoral way, you might not have customers anymore. You might just be using people to get more and more wealth instead of serving a population. And I would propose to you that the more you try to serve others, the more they're going to come to you, the more wealth you're going to gain, and you're going to use that wealth to make a difference in other people's life. That's called generosity. Generosity makes us better business people than greed. And again, we have to name our dragon. And sometimes we get in these traps and we start becoming successful and we get more and more wealth, and we get a trigger from that. We get a dopamine high or whatever, and we want more of it. And we can quickly go down the wrong path if we forgot why we got into that business in the first place. And my hope would be you got in the business to make a difference in other people's lives. And so, gluttony, it can ruin people's lives. You talk about addictions. There's just so many that we have as Americans. We sometimes worship pleasure. That's going to prevent you from accomplishing your goal in every aspect of your life. Gluttony, lust, both of those, we kind of worship pleasure in that sense. And so we wanted to figure out a way to use these analogies to talk to kids about that, because the best way, I think to change the world in a sense and keep kids from having to, we want to prevent these things from happening in the first place. We want to build virtue and strong foundation and great business leaders and great, leaders in the world from when they're very young, if they can learn to recognize the dragons in a sense, and they get excited about that. They want to slay the dragons. They know the virtues that can slay pride and envy and sloth. And if we can teach that, we basically a tool for parents to teach their kids how to make those great choices, to choose virtue over vice, because if they can do that and make better choices, they're going to be better business leaders. They're going to be better friends. They're going to be better spouse someday. They're going to be better, at sports and every aspect of their life. And so it's again, not arbitrary. These are just like I was talking about in step 2 before. You have to name your dragons, and it's just a creative way we came up with to help parents teach kids to name those dragons, recognize them, and slay them with virtue.
And I will say that I'm so excited for our kids to read this. So they're all going to read the series. Well, the 5-year-old is not going to read it, John. So I apologize, but give her a couple of years. But the other 4 are going to read the whole book series this summer. And I'm just, honestly, there's not a ton of good children's books out there. And then certainly from a faith perspective and like a foundational core values perspective. So I'm really excited for them to get into it and have conversations and even just have the context. And the boys are already look at the, the artwork and stuff. So if you're on YouTube, you can kind of see it's just a really neat package. Make sure if you get that, by the way, go directly to John's website. What is it, John? It's
extraordinarymission.com. That's where you're going to get the best price, the deal, the whole package there. Extraordinarymission.com. And I encourage you to read it out loud with your kids, because it's just a lot of great, when the parents know the dragons and the kids know the dragons and they know the stories, it gives you a language to talk about that purpose matrix stuff. It gives you ability to, when your kids are whining for more toys, you just name and they're color coded. I'm an eye doctor, so it's the visible light spectrum of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, and that's great because they remember the color. And you just say, "Hey, green one's getting you," and they're like, "Oh man, I need to be more generous and not whines for much stuff." Or any temper tantrum, you just say blue dragon, and they're like, "Oh, blue dragon."
We need this sooner than later. So they're gonna have to read a book a day for the next week. Yeah. John, this has been so good, and I just think so many different topics we covered. I appreciate it so much value, and I would just encourage people to just first of all, looking at John, check out his website, get his book, Ordinary Lives, Extraordinary Missions. For sure, get that. I'm sure it's on your website you reference. We'll put that in the show notes as well. But also get his book series for kids and read along with them. It is fantastic stuff. Make sure if there's a First Reconciliation Retreat or anything that John's there, both your spouse, both get there, check him out. It's a very engaging talk, really kind of just opened my eyes and is still having an impact. You see the Become a Saint, Be Not Afraid wristbands all over the place. So John, just keep it up. And it's neat to see someone like you just being getting the word out, honestly, and living on purpose, making big, courageous, bold moves for by the way, 10 books, eye doctor, five kids, right, John?
Yeah,
five kids.
Yeah.
You're just speaking, writing. I don't know how you do it all, but keep doing amazing things. We appreciate everything you've done. We appreciate you coming on. Thanks so much, John. extraordinarymissions.com, correct?
Yeah,
is the
there's
best place to find.
no S on the end. It's just extraordinarymission.com. Yeah, extraordinarymission.com. And thank you, Phil. I love this stuff. I love what you're doing and giving people that purpose matrix. It's definitely everybody keep listening to this. I listen to your podcast all the time. It's just great. It's great motivation and inspiration. So thank you for what you're doing.
Well, you've been, it's what's been inspiring to me is there's just, I want to make sure that what I'm talking about is founded in truth. And I've not been studying this like you have been studying this for as long. So to know that there's a lot of synergies here and connections makes me feel good about it. And it means a lot to me. So, and those words mean a lot to me, John. So I appreciate it. For our listeners, thanks so much for listening in. Whatever platform you're on, it just is so helpful if you subscribe, leave a review, get the word out, share with somebody. Anything that you do, we appreciate so much. John Wood, thanks so much for the Purpose Matrix, signing off.